He was outside, leaning over the hedge, hose in one hand, that old baseball cap tugged low like it could still hide time. His movements were slower now, but the way he tilted his head, that was the same. A habit etched from years of watching, scanning, needing control. He looked up as we passed, top down, engine warm beneath us. Paint catching the light in a way that made people look twice. It moved like it had history, like it had something to say. Claire sat beside me, one hand resting gently on my thigh, laughing softly at the radio. Her wedding ring caught the sun, flickering gold across the dash. She didn't turn her head. She didn't have to. The car spoke for us. He squinted, squirmed. Recognition arrived slow and reluctant. That car, it used to be his favorite, his pride. He washed it by hand every weekend, even when the weather didn't ask for it. It was his symbol, his escape, and now? It wasn't parked in his driveway. It rolled by him with grace and silence, owned by the daughter he chose not to send to college, the daughter he thought would just move on. I didn't wave, didn't smile, didn't check the mirror. Not out of anger, because I didn't need to anymore. This wasn't revenge. Not really. This was restoration of a car, of a life, of something deeper than trust. Certainty. The kind he'd stolen from me when he handed my future to someone else. Now I drive past him in the thing he loved most, not to taunt him, but to remind myself he bet against me, and I made it anyway. He used to say it like a fact, like gravity. Your college funds locked away. Started it the day you were born. No matter what happens, that's yours. I believed him. Of course I did. He wasn't the type to make big speeches, but when he talked about my future, his voice got steadier, sharper, like he needed me to hear it, like it mattered. So I tucked that promise into my chest and carried it through childhood like armor. Every test, every late night studying, every application I filled out, I did it with that promise echoing in the back of my head. You're going to college. You're going to build something. He said he'd take care of the path. I just had to walk it. And I did. I got into every school I applied to. Scholarships helped, but they weren't enough to cover everything. Still, I wasn't worried. He'd told me, since I was old enough to understand numbers, that he'd been saving. That I'd be fine. That when the time came, he'd be there. He even bragged about it once at a family barbecue. Pulled me into a side hug and told my aunt, she said, been putting money away for her since she had baby teeth. I remember how proud he looked. Like he was already clapping for my graduation. Like his job was done. Back then, I thought love looked like that. Preparation, provision, the quiet doing. Not words or hugs or I'm proud of yous, but steady groundwork. It's funny how betrayal doesn't always show up loud. Sometimes it's an envelope on the kitchen table. No big speech, no apology, just a folded letter that starts with, "We need to talk." I was 17. Acceptance letters stacked on the counter. My future lined up in color-coded folders. He sat across from me with a look I didn't recognize. Not guilt, not regret, just discomfort, like he wanted to get it over with. "It's about the college fund," he said. My chest went cold. I waited. "We used it," he added. "Things got tight, and Jake needed help getting on his feet." Jake. His new wife's son. 2 years older than me, barely past high school. already on his third attempt at finding direction. I didn't speak. I didn't yell. I didn't even blink. I just sat there, letting the words settle like dust. The fund wasn't frozen. It wasn't lost in the market. It was spent, redirected, gifted to someone else. He tried to soften it with nonsense. We still believe in you. You're resilient. You'll figure it out. As if faith could pay tuition. I nodded, quiet, still. My mom said later that I didn't even flinch, that I just stood, walked to my room, and shut the door. But something cracked inside me that day. Not just trust, expectation. He'd made a promise, and then he broke it like it was nothing. They got married when I was 16. Small backyard wedding, folding chairs on patchy grass, plastic cups filled with cheap champagne. I wore a burgundy dress that didn't fit right and kept my mouth shut, smiled for photos, held the bouquet during the vows. I did everything a daughter is supposed to do. Her name was Linda. Soft voice, careful eyes, always checking the room before speaking. She wasn't cruel, just present, in a way that made it clear she was here to stay. And Jake, her son, arrived like thunder behind her. He was the kind of boy people called a handful, with a smile. Big laughs, big mistakes, bigger second chances. He had charm that worked best when adults were watching. The kind that got him out of trouble, out of school suspensions, out of responsibilities. Dad adored him. He said Jake just needed guidance, a male figure, structure. Structure, he repeated often, like it was a magic word, so he gave him structure. Took him to football games, co-signed his car, bought him a laptop for school, even though Jake dropped out of community college 2 months in. And when Jake crashed the car twice, Dad just sighed and paid for repairs. Meanwhile, I was on honor roll. I had a part-time job. I handled my own textbooks and cooked dinner 3 nights a week when Mom was working late. But none of that drew the same attention. Jake lit up rooms. I made them run on time. At some point, I stopped trying to compete. There's a kind of silence that grows between a parent and a child, not from distance, but from replacement. From watching someone else take your seat at the table and be served second helpings with your name still etched on the plate. Dad didn't notice. Or maybe he did, and didn't know what to do with it. He was happy. That was what everyone kept saying. And I learned not to ask for things. I folded into the background where good daughters are meant to stay. I stopped reminding him about college savings. I didn't mention the way the house felt different now, Jake's music bleeding through the walls, his arguments with Linda echoing down the hall. I just waited. Graduation came. Then summer. Then the conversation that stole the floor from beneath my feet. I should have seen it coming. Should have noticed the way Dad dodged my questions about finances, how he changed the subject when school came up. But when you've been promised something your whole life, your brain protects you. Pretends the cracks aren't cracks, just shadows. But they were cracks, deep ones. And Jake had slipped through every single one. While I was steadying the foundation, Dad was building someone else's future with my bricks. And by the time I realized it, the structure he swore would hold me was already gone. It came in the mail like anything else. A plain white envelope, no markings, no drama, just my name in his handwriting. Tight, slanted, unmistakably his. I found it on the kitchen counter next to the cereal box and a pile of utility bills. For a second, I thought maybe it was something small. A note, a check, some kind of correction, an apology even. I opened it at the table. My hands didn't shake. Inside was a typed letter, short, sterile, almost clinical in its tone. It read more like a business memo than a message from a father. "We've made some financial decisions as a family," it said. "Given the circumstances, we've reallocated resources where they were most needed." Not even a mention of the word college. Not once. But I didn't need it spelled out. The message was clear. My fund, my future. The thing he swore up and down was untouchable. It was gone. The second half of the letter explained where it went. "Jake's business venture required startup capital. He's showing real potential, and we believe in supporting all of our children equally." That line stuck with me. All of our children. Equal, he said. But I never got startup capital. I got promises. Jake got the check. The paper felt heavier than it should have. I folded it back up slowly, tucked it into the envelope, and stared at the wall for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I made a sandwich, ate it in silence, then went back to my room and started mapping out Plan B. Mom didn't know. She found out a week later after I asked her if she had any backup savings from when I was little. Her face went pale. She didn't say anything at first, just sank into the kitchen chair and held her coffee like it was the only thing anchoring her to the moment. She didn't know because he never told her. The college fund had always been his thing. Something he handled. Something she trusted. She assumed it was still there, that it was protected. I think part of her wanted to believe it more than I did. But belief doesn't write tuition checks. That summer, I declined every college admission offer. I got a job instead. Then another, nights and weekends, started saving what little I could. I learned to live with less, to build without asking, to find pride in things no one clapped for. Dad stopped bringing it up. Maybe he thought it would just fade, that I'd forget, that time would smooth it out. But I don't forget. I file things, like letters, like betrayals, like the moment you realize the person who raised you to reach for more was always holding the ladder for someone else. I moved through that summer like someone on autopilot. Work, sleep, repeat. The dream side, built for years, gone. College dorms, lecture halls, campus jobs, all of it vanished before it even began. Friends packed bags and posted photos from orientation. I stocked shelves in a grocery store and came home with aching feet and silence. Dad didn't bring it up again. No follow-up, no questions, just a quiet assumption that I'd adjust, that I'd do what I always did, figure it out without complaint. It was as if the conversation never happened, as if college had been a whim, not a promise I'd shaped my life around. At night I'd lie awake, thinking about the way his voice sounded when he used to talk about my future. So certain, so steady, as if that certainty lived inside a savings account he never intended to spend. The hurt didn't come from the money. It came from how easy it was for him to hand it to someone else. How simple it was to watch me fold my plans like laundry and never once say, "I'm sorry." Jake, meanwhile, thrived on borrowed momentum. He bought new clothes, leased a car, told anyone who'd listen about his startup, though no one ever seemed to know what it actually was. Dad played along, nodded, smiled, called him ambitious. They had meetings in the den, whiteboards, laptops, coffee mugs left out like props. It felt like I was watching a play from backstage. A story I wasn't invited to anymore. Mom tried, in her way. She slipped me extra cash when she could. Packed lunches for work. Hugged me a little longer than usual when I got home late. But there was only so much she could do without igniting a war in the house. She chose peace. I chose distance. I stopped eating dinner at the table. Stop sharing updates. Stop hoping for any kind of correction. And slowly, I started building something of my own. Not out of inspiration, out of necessity. I found a secondhand laptop on Craigslist. Spent nights watching free coding tutorials. Learned how to write basic HTML, then JavaScript. Built simple websites for small businesses. Charged low, worked fast. Word spread. Clients followed. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Every dollar I saved felt like a brick in a wall between me and that kitchen table conversation. Every skill learned was proof that I could move without permission, without a degree, without him. He had picked his favorite, but I had picked myself. And that choice, made in silence, under a roof that no longer felt like home, was the first step towards something stronger than a plan. It was the start of resolve. I didn't take out loans. Not because I didn't qualify, but because I didn't want to owe anyone. Not banks, not him, not the world that told me a degree was the only ticket to success. I wanted clean ownership, every cent earned, every risk mine. So I kept working. 2 jobs, sometimes 3. Retail shifts, freelance projects, weekend gigs designing logos for local shops who paid late, but always said thank you. I lived cheap, shared rooms, ate dollar meals, skipped every indulgence that didn't bring a return. I learned to stretch things, groceries, software trials, energy. Sleep became optional, so did comfort. I had a mattress on the floor, a desk made from crates, and a whiteboard where dreams became to-do lists. And every night before bed, I'd check my earnings. Not just the money, but the proof that I was doing it, on my own. I didn't tell people what had happened. I let them assume I was taking a gap year, figuring things out. That was easier than explaining how a promise died and took my trust with it. Easier than answering the questions that always circled back to him. He didn't reach out much, maybe once or twice, a text asking how I was. I answered politely, always short, always vague. He'd reply with a thumbs up or a proud of you, kid. Like those words still held weight. They didn't. By then, Jake's startup had fizzled. The funding gone, the website dead, the excitement replaced by excuses. I heard about it through Mom. He's regrouping it, she said, trying something new. There was always another try, another plan, another check quietly written. But I wasn't watching anymore. I had work. My small business started growing. Clients doubled, then tripled. I upgraded my laptop, bought a real desk, got an accountant, started turning down lowball offers because I could. There's a kind of power in knowing you owe nothing to anyone. No diploma hanging on the wall, no scholarships framed, just grit and receipts. People love a degree until you show them results. Then suddenly they ask how you did it. They want shortcuts, tricks, a story they can market. But there was no magic. Just a girl who got left behind and decided that wasn't the end of her story. Every win I stacked was a quiet rebuttal to the moment he chose someone else's future over mine. I didn't need revenge. I needed proof. And I was building it, brick by quiet brick. Progress didn't come in a straight line. There were weeks when I thought I was gaining ground, only to have a client disappear without paying. Nights when code wouldn't compile, and my screen blurred from exhaustion. Months where every dollar felt like it was chasing rent, not growth. Some mornings, I questioned it all, wondered if I should give in, take night classes, follow the traditional path I'd once imagined. But every time I came close to folding, I remembered his words, his tone the day he told me the fund was gone. Cold, final, like I wasn't worth the fight. That memory kept me moving. I started applying for bigger contracts, sent out proposals to companies I had no business pitching to. Most didn't respond. Some reply with polite rejections. We're looking for someone with formal education. Others didn't bother softening it. No degree, no interview. Each no left a mark. But it also taught me how to refine, reword, reframe. I made my website tighter, my portfolio cleaner. I built fake case studies just to show what I could do. Turned them into something real. When one company ghosted me, I emailed their competitor and landed twice the rate. I learned the difference between being overlooked and being underestimated. One is passive. The other is a challenge. And I had learned how to take challenges personally. Still, the roadblocks stacked. There were months when I had to choose between buying software or groceries. When I borrowed Wi-Fi from a diner just to meet a deadline. When a deal fell through on the same day my rent was due. I remember sitting on the floor that night, staring at a cracked window pane, thinking about how easy it would be to call him. Just once. But I never did. Because once you let someone break your trust, calling them back feels like handing them the hammer again. So I kept going. Claire came into my life around that time. We met through a friend. She needed help with a project, something small. I charged her half my rate. She paid double, said, "I don't believe in discounts when the work's this good." She didn't care that I didn't have a degree. She cared that I delivered. She started recommending me to her contacts. Introduced me to a different circle. Entrepreneurs, builders, people who valued execution over credentials. For the first time, my work was getting seen for what it was, not what I lacked. The roadblocks didn't disappear, but they stopped defining the journey. I was still climbing, still hustling, still stretching every inch of possibility out of a path I'd paved myself. But now, I wasn't walking it alone, and that changed everything. Nothing exploded. No overnight success. No viral moment that changed everything. My business grew the way a tree does. Slow, unnoticed at first. Then suddenly, there's shade where there wasn't any before. I reinvested every dollar, skipped vacations, ate the same 3 meals for months, took on clients that challenged me, that stretched my skills past their limits. Each time I hit a wall, I learned something. Each time I felt like quitting, I worked a little harder instead. People think growth looks like graphs and milestones, but most days it looked like spreadsheets at midnight, emails I rewrote 5 times before hitting send, projects I reworked from scratch because good enough wasn't an option when your entire reputation is your resume. I still didn't speak to my father. He sent birthday messages, short ones, usually signed "Love, Dad." I responded politely, thanked him, but I kept the distance. He never asked about the business, never asked how I was paying rent, never asked if I still thought about the school I almost went to. And honestly, by then, I didn't. That dream had expired. Not out of bitterness, but because I'd replaced it with something real, something I owned. Every client testimonial, every contract signed, every small deposit into my savings account, it all meant more than a framed diploma ever could. There's a pride in survival that can't be taught in classrooms. My name started to circulate. Clients came back, referred friends. One project turned into 5. I had months where I made more than I used to make in a year. Not flashy, not loud, but stable, sustainable. And stability was something I'd taught myself to live without. Claire was with me every step. She made sure I ate when I got too focused, took my phone when I needed sleep, reminded me that rest was also part of building, that success wasn't just about scale, but about peace. I listened, most of the time. There's a kind of muscle you build when you do everything yourself. It doesn't like help. It resists softness. But I was learning how to trust again, piece by piece, brick by brick. One day, I opened my business dashboard and realized I could pay off all my debt, every card, every past due notice. I cleared the balances and closed the tabs in silence. No celebration, no announcement, just quiet, steady satisfaction. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like restoration of self-worth, of direction, of something that looked a lot like peace. I wasn't done building, not even close. But for the first time, I felt the ground under me hold firm. And I knew this foundation, it was mine. Claire didn't fall in love with what I was building. She fell in love with the part of me that refused to quit. She saw the stress, the fatigue, the nights when I stared at code like it had betrayed me, the mornings when I sipped cold coffee because I forgot I'd poured it hours earlier. And still, she stayed. She never asked when I'd be done working. She asked what I needed to keep going. It sounds simple, but it wasn't. Not when you've spent years building alone. Not when you've taught yourself that needing someone is the same as being vulnerable. But she had this quiet way of showing up, folding laundry while I answered emails, picking up dinner when I didn't notice the time, sitting beside me with her legs curled under her, listening as I talked through decisions I didn't know how to make. She never gave advice unless I asked. Never tried to fix it. She just listened. And that made room. Space I didn't know I'd been missing. We didn't talk much about my dad. She knew the outline, the betrayal, the absence where support should have been. She never pushed for more. But when the topic came up, she'd listen with a calm I couldn't match. "That's not on you," she'd say every time I tried to rationalize his choice. "He made a decision. You just lived through it." It landed harder than she probably knew, because I had spent so long carrying it like a failure of mine, like maybe I hadn't been impressive enough, grateful enough, easy enough to love. But she reminded me again and again that I was already enough. We moved in together a year after we met, a small apartment with bad plumbing and beautiful light. We made it ours, split everything, shared the weight. She never once made me feel like I owed her for the days she carried more. And maybe that's what made her different from everyone else. I didn't have to earn her belief. It was already there. When my company finally turned a consistent profit, she celebrated harder than I did. Took me out to dinner, toasted with a glass of wine and whispered, "You did this, and no one gets to take that from you. Not even him. Especially not him." In the quiet that followed, I realized something. I didn't miss my father's approval. I missed the idea of it. The idea that someone would see your worth and never waver, but I had that now. Not in the man who raised me. In the woman who chose me every day without conditions, without hesitation. She was the support I'd been waiting for, not loud, not grand, but unwavering. And that was more than I ever thought I'd have. He used to spend every Sunday morning in the driveway, hood up, rag in hand. That car, sleek, red, always spotless, was his religion. He'd polish it with the kind of focus most people save for prayer. Elbow grease and chrome, classical music humming from the garage. He said it helped him think. Said it was the only thing in life he could control. I was 8 the first time he let me sit behind the wheel. My feet didn't reach the pedals, but he showed me how to grip the steering wheel with both hands. "You drive this car like you mean it," he told me. "Not like it's doing you a favor." Back then, I thought he meant I'd inherit it someday. That it was his way of saying, this is yours too. Turns out that car had conditions, just like everything else. He sold it years after he drained my college fund. Said Jake needed help. Something about a second chance, an investment, a bridge until things got stable again. He didn't say it like it hurt him. He said it like it was noble, like giving up that car proved something about love and fatherhood. I didn't comment. Didn't ask if he remembered the Sundays, the rag, the ritual. Some ghosts don't need to be exhumed. Still, I thought about that car more often than I admitted. Not because I wanted it, but because it was a symbol of promises, of polish over rust, of the version of him that looked like a protector before I learned how easily he traded stability for convenience. It came back to me one random Tuesday. Scrolling through listings for something entirely unrelated, and there it was. Same make, same year, same faded red, now worn with time. Different owner. Still intact and cheap, too cheap. I clicked through the photos like I was touching old wounds. Leather cracked, dash scuffed, paint dull, but it was the same car, the same one he used to love, like it was breathing. I closed the tab, reopened it an hour later, left it open overnight. The next morning, I bought it. Didn't tell Claire. Didn't tell anyone. I didn't buy it for nostalgia. I bought it because I could. Because what he let go for someone else, I reclaimed for myself. Not for him, for me. For every promise that crumbled. Every word that faded. Every Sunday I sat on the porch watching him worship something with wheels, hoping one day I'd be worth that kind of care. I had no intention of giving it back. I was going to rebuild it, piece by piece, on my terms. And this time, it wouldn't be a symbol of what he loved. It would be a reflection of what I'd survived. I wired the payment without a word. No phone calls, no negotiation. Just one quiet transfer from an account I built with my own hands. The seller didn't ask questions, just gave me a time, an address, and a promise the title was clean. When I arrived, the car sat under a threadbare tarp in a slanted garage, half shadowed by ivy and dust. It looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I'd just gotten bigger. I circled it once, hand trailing lightly across the hood. The paint was tired, sun-faded. The rims were scratched. The leather interior had taken on that brittle, worn smell that happens when something's been forgotten. But it was still alive under all that. The seller handed me the keys, barely looked me in the eye. "Need some love," he said. I nodded. "I've got plenty." Driving it home was surreal. The engine sputtered at first, then found its rhythm. The steering wheel was stiff. The brakes whined, but it moved. And that was enough. Claire didn't ask questions when I pulled into the driveway. She stood at the window, eyebrows raised, mouth forming the beginning of a smile. I shrugged, parked it next to our reliable, boring sedan. She came outside in her slippers, arms crossed against the chill. "Is that what I think it is?" I nodded. "Used to be his." She walked around it slowly, the way you'd circle a monument, eyes scanning every imperfection. When she made it back to the driver's side, she looked at me differently. Not confused, not judgmental, just present. "You gonna restore it?" "Bit by bit," I said. "Not in a rush." She ran her fingers along the door handle. "Why now?" I didn't have a clean answer, just a feeling. Like the universe had dropped something back in my lap and asked quietly, "What are you going to do with it this time?" Over the next 6 months, I worked on it when I could. Weekends, evenings, replaced what was broken, cleaned what could be saved, took it to a friend's garage when the job was too big, paid in full, no financing, no IOUs. There was something healing in the process, the sanding, the polish, the small victories hidden in each repair. It wasn't about the car, it was about taking something that had once been used to measure my worth and making it mine, not as inheritance, not as forgiveness, as reclamation. I never told my father I found it, never told him I bought it back, because this time the story didn't belong to him. It belonged to the woman who rebuilt her life in silence and now owned the very thing he let go without looking back. The day I finished the car, it was raining, not hard, just a steady drizzle, soft enough to blur the edges of everything. I stood in the garage, engine humming under the hood, paint gleaming under a single overhead bulb. The red had depth again. The chrome caught the light. Every dent had been smoothed, every flaw corrected by hand. It didn't look perfect. It looked lived in and whole. Claire walked in behind me, holding 2 mugs of coffee. She handed me one, didn't speak, just stood beside me, looking at what I'd made, what I'd reclaimed. I sipped, still quiet. Then I turned to her and said, "It's yours." She blinked, once, twice. "What?" I set the mug down, pulled a small envelope from my back pocket. Inside, the title, clean, transferred. In her name. She opened it slowly, eyes scanning the document. No ceremony, no speeches, just paper and fact. "I rebuilt it for you," I said. "Because when everything fell apart, you didn't. Because you stayed. Because you believed in me when no one else did. And because I wanted something in this world to belong to you the way I belong to you." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. She looked at the title again, then at me, then back at the car. "You don't have to drive it," I added. "You don't even have to park it anywhere special. I just wanted you to have something built from the ground up, something beautiful, something earned." She set her mug next to mine and stepped forward, tracing her fingers along the hood. Her eyes were glassy, but her voice was steady. "This is the best gift anyone's ever given me." "It's not a gift," I said. "It's proof." She leaned against the car, arms crossed, that small, quiet smile she wore when she didn't trust herself to speak. We stood like that for a long time. Later that night, we drove it for the first time. The rain had stopped, and the streets shimmered with leftover water and streetlight reflections. She took the wheel. I sat in the passenger seat, watching her adjust the mirrors, her hands sure and careful. The engine purred. We cruised through old neighborhoods, past parks I used to sit in, past corners where I once cried alone after job rejections, past my father's house. He was outside, sweeping the porch, pausing mid-motion when he saw the car roll by. He stared. I didn't wave. Claire didn't slow down. The car glided past like a question that had already been answered, and I sat in silence, knowing he saw it. Not just the car, the proof, the life, the love, everything he chose not to build with me, now rebuilt without him. The streets felt different that night, empty, but not hollow. Lit by traffic lights blinking red through puddles, storefronts closed and quiet, as if the whole city had paused to make room for us. Claire drove like she'd owned the car forever, steady, present, unshaken by the weight of what it meant. I watched her in profile, the way her hand rested lightly at 12 o'clock, the way her eyes scanned each intersection like she wasn't just driving a car, but carrying something bigger. There was no music, just the soft hum of the engine and the occasional slap of tires on wet pavement. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. When we turned the corner onto my father's street, I felt it before I saw him. The flicker of porch light through trees. The faint blue glow of a television behind the curtains. The world he chose after leaving mine behind. He was on the porch, leaning on the railing, one hand tucked in his jacket pocket. From the distance, I could just make out the tilt of his head, the stillness in his shoulders. He was looking straight at us, or maybe at the car. His face didn't change. No wave, no call, just his eyes, squinting like they were trying to place something that didn't fit anymore. Claire didn't look his way. She kept her gaze forward, her posture even. Not cold, not performative, just calm. The car moved past slowly, not for drama, for clarity. I didn't check the mirror. I knew he was still standing there. Knew he saw the car. Knew, somewhere deep in the quiet part of his brain, he recognized it. Recognized what it used to be to him, and what it now meant to me. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about showing off. It was about letting silence speak louder than any confrontation could. He once told me that car was his favorite thing in the world, that it made him feel like he'd done something right. Now it belonged to the life he left behind, and I had no interest in returning it. We kept driving. Past old routes I used to take home from school, past the strip mall where I worked my first job, past the bus stop I used to wait at when my car broke down and no one came to get me. Every corner held a version of me I no longer needed to carry. When we finally pulled back into our driveway, Claire turned off the engine and looked over at me. "Are you okay?" she asked. I smiled, small, certain. "Yeah," I said. "I'm okay." I didn't feel vindicated. I felt clean, like something long tangled had finally been laid to rest, and the road ahead was mine now. No ghosts in the rear view, just open space. It's easy to say it was just money, a college fund, a number in an account, something you can lose and still survive. But that's not what he took. What he took was certainty. The foundation I thought I had under me. The quiet belief that when someone says, "I've got you," they mean it. That love doesn't come with fine print or redistribution clauses. That if you show up, do the work, make the grades, keep the peace, you'll be protected. He took that. With one decision, he told me I wasn't the priority. That my effort was admirable but not enough. That someone else's emergency, someone else's potential, someone else's chaos was worth more than my preparation. And that does something to a person. It makes you question every yes, every smile, every plan you dare to make for yourself. For a long time, I lived with that doubt. I carried it like weight in my chest, built my business around it, let it push me, shape me, harden me. I became self-sufficient because I had no other choice. People called me strong, independent, resourceful. But the truth is, I was just tired of asking. Tired of depending on people who said one thing and did another. Tired of hoping someone would do for me what I kept doing for everyone else. And in that space, between the silence and the resolve, I found something better than trust. I found discipline. He taught me that, even if he didn't mean to. In choosing someone else's dream over mine, he showed me how to build without applause, how to survive without support, how to win quietly while no one is watching and hold on to it like a secret until it no longer fits in the dark. And now, years later, I understand the cost. He didn't just take the money, He took the chance to be proud of me for the right reasons. He missed the journey, he missed the climb, and by the time he realizes what he walked away from, there won't be a seat left at the table. Because I set a new one with my own hands. For people who stayed. For people who didn't need to be reminded how to love me. He can keep his justifications, his silence, his regret. Because what he took no longer defines me. What I built in the aftermath does, and I will never let anyone take that from me again. I never planned to build a company. At first, it was just survival. A way to pay bills. A way to make sure I never had to call him for help. A quiet rebellion disguised as work. But over time, it became more than that. It became structure, purpose, proof that I could create something real without permission, without a degree, without the backing of a father who'd already bet on someone else. The early days were all grit. Long nights, missed meals, learning everything the hard way. I made mistakes, lost money, burned out, got back up. And every time I hit a wall, I built a door. Clients came and went. Some treated me like I was disposable. Others stayed, loyal, passing my name along in circles that never used to include people like me. And slowly, my name started to mean something. My work started to speak before I even showed up. That's when I knew I had built something bigger than survival. I had built a reputation, not loud, not flashy, but solid. It wasn't about being the best. It was about being consistent, delivering, showing up. Again and again, until people stopped asking about degrees and started asking about availability. Success didn't hit all at once. It arrived in small waves. The first time I paid rent early. The first time I turned down a client because I didn't need the money. The first time someone offered to invest and I said no. Because I didn't need saving. I needed space to grow, to keep building, to stay in control of what was mine. Claire saw it before I did. She'd say, "You don't realize it, but you've already done the hard part." I'd laugh. Tell her there's always another hard part coming. But she was right. The hardest part was believing I deserved to build something for myself. That I didn't need my father's voice in my ear, or his name on a check, or his car in the driveway as proof that I mattered. Now, I had my own keys. To my business. To our home. To the car he used to love. Now sitting in our garage with fresh paint and a new story. It wasn't about proving him wrong anymore. It was about proving myself right. That I could start from the bottom and climb. That I could lose faith in someone and still find it in myself. That I could take what was left of a broken plan and build something stronger, more honest, more mine. So, no, I didn't get a degree, but I got something better. Freedom. And I earned every inch of it. There's a moment when you realize you've crossed a line you thought you'd never reach. For me, that moment came quietly. No fanfare, no big announcement, just the sound of keys sliding into a new ignition, the hum of an engine that wasn't borrowed from anyone else's dreams. Claire and I drove that car on a Saturday morning, the kind of morning where the air feels sharp and clean and the city hasn't fully woken yet. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. The road stretched ahead, empty streets, familiar turns, the kind of quiet that lets you breathe deep without fear. We drove past his house, past the places I used to walk alone, carrying too much hope for too long. He wasn't outside. The lawn was overgrown. The porch light flickered like it was holding on by a thread. And I felt something loosen inside me. Not anger, not sadness, just release. All the years of waiting, of hoping, of broken promises fell away with the morning sun. I realized then that the car wasn't just metal and paint. It was a symbol of survival, of resilience, of a future I built on my own terms. I looked over at Claire. She smiled. And in that smile, I saw everything I needed. A quiet triumph. A life reclaimed. No words. No noise. Just us. Driving forward. With the top down and no regrets. Years ago, I believed I needed a college fund to prove I was worth something. Now, I know worth isn't handed down. It's earned. Built. Carved out in moments of silence and strength. In the quiet choices to stand firm when everything inside wants to give up. I drove past his house one last time and let the past stay there. Because I had found my own road, and I was finally free to drive it.